Good Friday evening. Good to have you with us. This is First Take Live. Hey, listen, tonight's show, boy, I'm going to tell you, you're going to have to put your hat on and be really focused to listen to what my guest is talking about. We're going to be talking about, is there such a thing as financial security? Is there such a thing as that? And my guest tonight is a gentleman by the name of Beck, and he is, I call him a financial truth educator. I'll tell you a little, before I introduce you to him, I'm going to tell you a little bit how I met him. A number of years ago, I read this book called The Creature from Jekyll Island, and I was given this book to read, and that's the cover right there. And when I finally read that, I thought, oh my gosh, what is going on? And so what I did was, I thought, how can this be true? How could we have had the Bank Act done by a bunch of guys who were basically ramrodding the economy? So if you really want to be shocked about how the bank works, the Federal Reserve, you'll read that book. And then what happened was someone told me about this guy who was kind of taking on the institutions, although he's quieted down since then because he found out he didn't have to fight so hard. And I went to listen to this gentleman in Coburg, and I recorded the talk, and I kept playing it back over and over again. And I said to myself, and this goes back a number of years ago, say, one day I want to interview this guy because what he has done, what his journey has been, is really going to help us understand how come we're in so much debt, where the debt is coming from, and perhaps what you can do to remedy it if we get that far. But more importantly, tonight's show is about you learning about something that you had no clue about. And bringing us that information tonight is my guest. Welcome to the studio, Beck. Good to have you.
Pleasure to be here, George.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So I saw you on stage, and we've had an opportunity to be here. So it's good to have you. Let's talk a little before we get into this thing. And I know that we're going to talk. We're going to use the Monopoly game as a prop for you. Not that you're against the game. You're going to use it as a tool. Before we get to that, let's talk about your journey. Your journey kind of began similar to my journey, where it started with that book.
Creature from Jekyll Island.
Yeah. So tell me about that. What prompted you to look at that book, first of all?
Actually, my cousin gave me the audio, Ed Griffith's audio, which is about 45 minutes long, as you know. Yeah. And I sat on that for 3 months before I actually listened to it. And then when I listened to it, it resonated, and I knew, it just confirmed that I knew that things are not as they appear.
Right.
And it caused me to rethink my situation at the time, and it caused me to get on the internet and utilize the internet to search deeper into what I was hearing on this audio tape to confirm the truth of it.
And what was the sense of this thing that resonated within you? What was that sort of awakening? Like, what woke up?
Well, I think all of us have this feeling inside that something's not quite right out there.
Yeah.
And without a benchmark to know what that might be, we go through life wondering that and questioning a lot of stuff, but we don't actually do anything about it.
Right.
Or don't get the benchmark to seek something or go another path or anything like that. And so it just confirmed for me what I'd already known inside, that things are not as they appear out there, that what I'm being told is not necessarily the truth.
Well, and thank goodness for books. I mean, we also know that when countries are taken over by certain governments, the first thing they do is they burn the books because they don't want people to get knowledge.
That's right.
Right. So this is all about knowledge, and we're still able to get it in this country and in other countries still, and the internet has been a big source of that. So then take me a little further down the road. So now you get this knowledge, you wake up and you go, okay, now everything you believe, to that point that you believe to be true was
confirmed not to be true, but it was confirming what I'd already known, but was in denial or just wasn't admitting. But it's that little thing that we all have inside.
Right.
You just know when something's not right, but you don't necessarily know what it is.
Okay. So now let's move a little further down this. So now, in this book, The Creature of Jekyll Island, they talk about the creation of the federal bank and the bank, and we could also in the U.S. called the Fed, and today, of course, in Canada we call it the Bank of Canada.
Correct.
We think that those institutions are actually owned
by the government.
By the government.
That's correct.
And they are
not.
The
U.S. Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express.
Okay.
It is a private organization. It's owned by private cartels, private individuals, investors. And it has nothing to do with government. And in fact, if you look in the blue pages of the government phone book, the phone numbers are not listed under government agencies.
Okay.
For those institutions. So they are really separate. They're part of the game, but they're separate from the game, and they are, in fact, privately owned cartels.
Right. So when people are saying they're talking to the Federal Reserve, or in this case talking to the Bank of Canada, we're really not talking anything but yet another private enterprise.
Absolutely.
Right.
Just a business like any other business.
Right. Now that shocks most people because they think the Bank of Canada is no more the Bank of Canada than Garth of Canada.
I don't know. Maybe you are the bank.
Oh, I could. Well,
But that, it's a perception.
okay.
And people, I guess, believe that this is a bank for the people or of the government, but in fact it's not. It's a private cartel. And like the bank would dictate to your life if you've got debts, they dictate to the government how to run their affairs just as much as they dictate to the people.
Okay. All right. So now, I guess we want to go a little further down. We talk about financial, to answer the question at the bottom of the screen, financial security. Is there such a thing in your mind?
Well, absolutely not.
And yet people have thousands and thousands of dollars, RSPs, assets and everything else that they've accumulated money because they think that's what they need to have. And you say that still is not financial security.
Nope. And I think if people analyze or review their lives, especially the older generation, it doesn't seem, no matter how much you work, you never really seem to get ahead.
Right.
You might get a bigger house and a second car, but the debts are still there. The disposable income is not there, and it seems like it's in our minds that we're going to achieve this success in the future, and the future never does actually come. And there's reasons for that, though.
Okay.
And that this is I guess maybe why I'm here is to share some math with respect to working for a living, the difference between gross pay and net pay, if you will.
All right, let's start there. Let's start gross pay. So this everybody needs to take notes because having an audience with you is, because you don't do seminars anymore.
Only if asked, and I've just kind of gone a little bit private there because there is a lot of confusion out there in the marketplace, and I just kind of, I don't know, I got a message there that maybe people are happy where they're at and to not share some certain things with them.
Right.
That might rock their world and make them unhappy.
Right.
But
actually, if they really look at it, they could get pretty happy.
Well, yeah. if we go to the extent we talked about earlier,
All
sure.
right. Okay, so let's carry on.
But
so
the underlying cause is of the debt, if you will, is people working for a living. So I know that's going to sound really strange because that's what everyone does. But what we have to do is take the math into consideration here, and the math is the difference between gross pay, that is what you are paid at the face for your labor contribution.
So let's say I work $20 an hour, and I get $20 for every hour I work, and I work, let's say, 10 hours, so there's $200.
Yep.
Okay.
Let's just do it on a real simple figure that people can follow along with. Let's say that your gross pay at the end of the week is $1,000.
Okay, fair.
So your employer, by the gross pay, is acknowledging that the value of your contribution as an employee was worth $1,000.
Top line, there it is.
Okay, but also that's an expense on the corporation of that amount. So in other words, if a corporation pays me $1,000 to make a cup, the corporation has incurred a $1,000 expense.
Because they had to pay you for the cup you made.
That's right.
Okay.
Which means they have to sell the cup for at least $1,000 to recover the expense.
To stay flush.
That's right. To recover the expense so they can stay in business.
Right.
To do it again and again and again. The problem comes in, so this cup is now for sale, let's say on Monday morning for $1,000 plus PST and GST, minimally. And the problem comes in, if I may, and that is on when the paycheck is issued, the gross pay recognizes that the labor contribution here is $1,000, but the worker goes home with an after-tax less than of, say, $650. So on that point, the worker does not have the money to buy back the fruits of his own production.
So yeah, he couldn't buy it back because he's only taking home $650.
Taking $650, but the cup is for sale for $1,000 plus PST and GST. And we have to think in terms here, Garth, of collectively across the country.
Every person.
Every man, woman, every employee out there is building cups, cars, TVs, houses, furniture, building the highways, the apartment buildings, so on and so forth.
Good example. Let's talk about GM. Someone goes, let's say it's a $50,000 vehicle.
Yep.
Right, and it's a big hot issue today because we're all worried about jobs. So $50,000 vehicle, and you're making $50,000 a year.
Yep.
Let's just say that there was a labor exchange.
Sure.
So now, but by the time they give you your deductions and everything else, you come away with
$35,000.
Right. So you can't even buy what you were paid to build.
That's right. So in other words, I produced a car worth $50,000. I did the work, or you people are doing the work, but you don't have the means, the money available now to buy back the fruits of our own production. But in other words, we're short, in this case, $15,000.
And so in this case, though, but then people would say that money that you were deducted goes to pay for a lot of things that, it's not just the car, but you have to pay for the roads and the sewage and all that sort of stuff. So someone's got to pay for that because someone had to build that.
Well, that's what they tell us. And but again, if I may get back to this collective thing for a moment, and keeping in mind that we people go to work for one reason, and that is to produce goods and services for each other. True. Not the corporation. The corporation is there to facilitate these events, but not there to reap the benefits of it because we're building cars for ourselves. Corporations don't drive cars.
Right.
Dogs don't drive cars, people do. People live in homes, not corporations. So what the people are doing when they're going to work, we're doing it for each other.
Right. I'm producing it for you, you're producing it for me.
Okay, so if we think in terms of that the collective labor contribution or gross pay, the wages paid last year, just for an example, in 2007, was $1 billion across the country. After tax, all of those workers collectively only took home $650 million.
All right, we're going to go to break. We're going to talk about, so that difference that you're kind of using as an example here is part of the problem where the debts are coming from today.
It's a big problem.
All right, we'll be right back with more of this financial truth education. You got to watch this. It's pretty fascinating. At least it's going to make you ask some questions. First Take Live continues right after this. Welcome back to First Take Live. We're talking with Beck, a financial truth educator, as I call him. By the way, I just want to let you know something. That one thing that I noticed about Vic when I went to see him a number of years ago in Coburg, and since then I've heard about him, is that he's always saying to people, figure this out for yourself. I'm just telling you where I got the information, and go and check it out yourself. He says, don't believe me. Don't believe anybody. That's right. Go and check it out. And so tonight, if you're twigged to this sort of idea, it's not done here, because you're going to get slaughtered out there if you try and take this information and don't go get the backup information. And that educator is right with me right now, Vic Beck. All right. So Vic, we talked about the difference, $1 billion. Now there's only $650 million.
Yep.
And so there's a shortfall of
$350
million, let's say.
Yep.
Okay.
So again, collectively, amongst all the workers across Canada, collectively we are short $350 million to buy back the fruits of our own production.
Right.
We just simply don't have the money amongst all of us to buy back what we did.
Because the government there were deductions.
Deductions.
And for whatever reason, that's all we ended up with.
That's right. And then again, on that $1 billion is PST and GST, which is another 13% on $1 billion, you see. And this is before profit taking or selling to a distributor who wants to make a profit, selling to a retailer who wants to make a profit. So that $1 billion could easily be $5 billion. And the worker still has only $650 million.
So now, you're saying that if this continues going up, we have bankruptcy.
Well, if I may pick up on that disparity again of that difference between them. We'll just stick with the bare bones here. The maximum, the minimum purchasing price then of the goods is $1 billion.
Okay.
And the maximum purchasing power amongst the people is $650 million. So the question becomes, where are we going to get the other $350 million that we don't have collectively?
Correct. Okay.
In comes the bank.
All right.
That would be happy to lend us that $350 million that we don't have. Remember, we're the ones that did the work. We're the ones building the cars, the TVs, the furniture.
So they're going to lend us the money to get back to where we started.
That's right. So they will gladly lend us the $350 million collectively. Everyone gets their own little loan and stuff like this, and that's now we can buy back the fruits of our production.
So we can go get that car, we can go get that, house, we can go what we want.
Yep. But now we have to go in debt to buy back the fruits of our own production to do that. To enjoy the fruits of our labor. Remember, we're doing what we do for each other.
Right.
At the end of the day, what you do is for people. What I do is for people. What the guys at General Motors are doing is not for themselves. It's for everyone else.
Someone else gets to drive the car.
That's right. Yeah. So now we all go to the bank collectively and borrow that $350 million. But then on top of that, now we got to pay that $350 million that we borrowed, but we got to pay that back plus interest. So you see, it gets uglier and uglier as we go on here. And one thing about the interest now, to bring the interest into the equation, when the bank lends out that $350 million amongst us all, that $350 million is injected into circulation.
Okay.
Okay, but remember, there's interest on those loans.
Okay.
And that interest is not part of that loan, so that interest is not injected into the economy, but it's going to be taken out of the economy with the payments of the loan back.
Yeah, so the $350 million is now in the economy, everybody's using it.
Yep.
But the interest, the bank is taking and is holding it out, and it doesn't even go in the economy.
It doesn't exist.
It just sits there.
It doesn't exist, but it has to be paid back.
Okay.
So we loan $350 million into the economy, and let's say the interest rate is 10% over 1 year. So we have to pay back $350 million plus the 10%, so we have to pay back $385 million. But only $350 million was produced into the economy. Where are we going to get that other $35 million? It doesn't exist.
Right.
Okay, now people will think, well, I'm okay, I'm not going bankrupt. So some of us will share in the ability to pay that principal and interest, and others it simply mathematically doesn't exist.
Well, let's stop here for a moment, because right now, and you're quoting something that I've already heard as well, that today, in the Canadian economy and in the U.S. economy, many people are actually paying their debts with their credit cards.
Credit cards. So they're paying debts with debts.
They're paying debts with debts. So we're talking about right now that is a certain financial failure about to happen.
Oh, well, it might happen. I don't want to go down that path.
Right.
It's looking that way, yes.
Right, because you can't keep doing that.
No, because when you get to the point you're paying your debts with debts, what's that telling you? You don't have the means to pay them.
Right.
So the best you can do is stave off the inevitable by, I've actually met people that they'll go out and apply for all sorts of credit cards and they'll start moving the funds around the credit cards.
Right.
I talked to a couple and they said, well, they made their payments for the first year, no problem. But then come year two, now they got a $16,000 debt on one credit card that has escalated into $65,000 on other credit cards. See, that money simply does not exist in the economy.
Right.
It's not there.
Okay.
And so it becomes a dog-eat-dog world where you got to struggle to get what you can get to make your payments, which is going to cost someone else who's not going to get that ability, and that's the cause of bankruptcy. It's a mathematical fact when we play the game like this that people are going to go bankrupt. So it's not the fault of the people. It's the way the people are behaving collectively that is causing others burdens and ourselves. It's falling upon ourselves. Totally.
Well, is this where we introduce your take on using the Monopoly game board as a prop to explain the economy? Is this where we do that?
Probably a very good time.
All right.
So I find that the Monopoly game is people can follow along with that very simply.
You came across this one day because you were going to a seminar. You woke up in the middle of the night and you said, and you got a message, or it came to your mind. You said, use the Monopoly game. People have all played the Monopoly game.
Yep. And people can relate to this game.
When you did this time, when we were talking in the green room, I'm like, Vic, thanks for bringing the game.
Yep.
All right, this is going to be kind of cool.
Because this game does represent what's going on in Canada, what's going on around the world with the buying and the selling and the commodities.
Okay, so here's the game. I'm going to hold the game up, right? So we got our game, which is called the Monopoly game, right? All right.
That's right.
We're going to do this on a two-shot if we can go to the twos.
We understand that in order to play this game, first off, a player requires a token to play.
Right. So you got. I like the shoe.
Okay, you be the ballerina, and I'll be the thimble.
Okay.
But the point is that if you don't have a token to play the game, you can't play the game.
Right. Because I don't know where you are, so I'm going to play the game.
And the reason this is important for people because the token in the real world is your birth certificate. If you don't have a birth certificate, you cannot get a bank account out there.
That's true.
You cannot get a social insurance number, which means you cannot gain employment. And so without the birth certificate, you cannot play the game. So although we're using this as an analogy here, this is the token to play this game, and the big game out there, it's the birth certificate that you all have that is the token. And you cannot play out there without that birth certificate. You cannot play Monopoly without a token.
Okay, that's fair.
So that's to put things in perspective for people.
All right.
Okay, so you can't play this game and get money or pay taxes through the token on this game if you don't have a token. Same thing goes out there.
So I can't go out there and play in the game unless I have a birth certificate.
That's right. Because without that birth certificate, you cannot get a bank account.
Right.
Because you can't. Let me clarify this. Without a birth certificate, you cannot get a driver's license. You cannot get passports, a social insurance card. So you have no identification to show a bank.
Okay. All right.
Period.
Okay.
So
good.
you can't play.
All right. Okay.
So, but the critical thing here, the main point I want to make with this is that, with respect to the token, let's remember one thing here, people, that we are not the token. We're the player.
We're standing on. We're the one playing the game. Like
that's right.
We're not walking on that board. Oops.
That's right.
I thought I canceled that. We're not walking on the board. In this case, we are actually doing what?
Well, again, with the game, we need the token to play the game. And so in the real world, you need the token to play the game.
Okay.
And for example, in order to, the key point I want to make here is that the player is not the token.
Okay.
So if the token, for example, was to land on a space on the game board here in Monopoly that required the token to pay tax, that has nothing to do with the player.
So the token has to pay, in this case, the birth certificate has to pay tax.
That's and the birth certificate, the best analogy there is because there's basically 30 million people in Canada. We have 30 million participants in the game Monopoly, but we can't all get a colored token because there aren't enough colors in the spectrum for that, so we get a birth certificate with a legal name on it, each different. So now we all have a different token, a different birth certificate.
I have a Garth Riley birth certificate,
that's right.
So that's my token to play the game.
And interestingly enough, when I met with the Registrar General, Deputy Registrar General in Ontario, she referred to this birth certificate as a valuable token.
So let's get this straight. That you went and talked to the registrar, but that's where every birth is registered,
Yep.
And she says it's a valuable token.
The birth certificate.
The birth certificate is.
And again,
it isn't who you are; it's the game piece.
That's correct, and it is not personal identification.
It is not personal ID.
She was very adamant about that. It is not personal identification.
A birth certificate is not personal ID.
No more than this token is personal identification. Remember.
Okay, all right, fine, keep going, man. All right.
The token is to play the game. The player is not the token. The player is separate from the game.
Right.
It's the token that is subject to the rules of the game, not the player.
Right.
Okay, and all the laws, rules, and regulations out there pertain to the legal name on the certificate, not the people who are the player.
Okay. Although we get confused.
We need to get that in mind.
Right,
here.
so we're just saying, for example, for a moment, our token to play the game is our birth certificate.
Yep.
But that birth certificate isn't me as a person in a physical form. It's represented in some kind of a document.
It's a legal document.
Okay, that's all it is.
Yep.
So I am here as this person, as a natural person.
Yep.
But I am not a birth certificate.
No.
Okay.
Well, that's up for you to decide.
Well,
I don't see you as a birth certificate, but
No.
lots of people out there, if they're asked for their identification, asked, is this you? They will say yes.
Right.
It's like saying they're a token.
Right. You say, is this you? You say, no, I'm not that.
That's right. No, this is
This is a piece of paper.
give you a head or shake. This is me.
Okay. All right. All right. So we're gonna go. So now we're talking about this. We've got about 30 seconds before we want to go to the next break. So now that we understand that we are there, it's like the movie The Matrix, and that these tokens are in the game.
That's right.
Now we're going to come back and talk about what?
Well, we're going to take a little bit further here with the relevancy and the meaning of this token and how people have got them bound themselves to the rules of this game that's being played out there, because we forgot we're the player. We're separate from the game. We're not subject to any part of this thing.
It's like we went in and we stood on the board and thought that was our role.
That's right.
All right, I like this, Vic. All right, coming back with more of Beck, and financial fallacies, maybe some here. Worth a look, anyways. Stay with us. First Take Live continues. Welcome back to First Take Live, talking with Vic Beck, who I call him a financial truth educator. By the way, Vic is very clear on this, and so am I, that this is just some information, and it may cause you to think, may cause you to be a little upset, and may cause you to laugh or chuckle or get up, just go off the deep end. But maybe he's completely wrong. So this is just an idea. Take a look at this. Maybe it can make sense for you. All right, Vic. So we're back to this Monopoly thing, and we're playing the board game here. All right.
Yep.
And in this board game, here we go. So now.
Well, again, we're relating this game to what's going on out there in the real world.
Right.
And another thing for us all to remember when we come to play this game of Monopoly, and the same thing's going on out there, the player's only obligation to this game is himself.
Yeah, I come and I sit outside the board.
That's right. In other words, the players do not come to this game with their own money.
That's
true. The game provides the money.
Right.
Okay, so we need to remember that we're not the token, we're the player. The game provides the money, not the player.
Okay.
I'm sure if people went out and bought this game in the store and had to play with their own money, they wouldn't play.
Right.
But out there they're doing that, but that's only happening because we believe we're the token.
Okay.
We believe when we get a bill in the mail that it's our bill. It's a bill to the token. Remember, the player is not the token. The player is separate from all of this. This is the mind.
It's the birth certificate.
That's right.
The birth certificate is the playing token.
Which bears a legal name.
A legal name.
Okay, so
in
it's like
the province of Ontario.
Like this, there's the Beck Victor.
Yeah.
And if people were to look on their birth certificate, they'll see that name on there is generally, and certainly on their invoices and bills, that name is in all capital letters.
Yes.
Now that's not a huge issue with me anymore, but grammatically, when we went to school to learn how to spell our names, it was a proper noun, which is upper lowercase.
Right.
That name identifies people. Whereas in all caps format of the same name is something else.
It identifies actually an entity.
The token. That's right. A legal entity, the token. And
All
remember, we people
thing.
are not legal entities. We're the player.
Okay.
And I'm going to repeat that lots because we need to remember that. So if the token is moved on the board here and the token is required to pay taxes,
right?
It's of no concern to the player.
Because the token is what owes the money.
It's the token that's being taxed, not the player.
So they say, but in this game, when we're playing it, we go, oh man, you're taking my money. But you're taking the token's money.
Well, that's right, because here's the money, if I may, that comes with the Monopoly game.
Yeah,
this is the money that pays the token's taxes, because this is the money that it must be played with the game.
Right, okay.
And it's the same in Canada. There's legal tender in Canada, and that's the money that must be used to play the game.
Right.
We have no choice in that.
Right.
Good, bad, right, or wrong is not the point, but the game has rules, and the game says, okay, when the token is required to pay taxes, it must be paid in Monopoly money in this case.
Exactly.
Or legal tender in the big game out there.
Right.
No choice.
Okay.
The choice is how we get that money.
All right.
And as we've expressed now, going through the working for a living, the gross pay versus net pay thing, you can see that there's a huge loss happening there every day. And there's no escape from that. It's not possible, because when you're giving 100% and going home with an after-tax less than, eventually you run out of gas. There's nothing positive to come of that.
Right.
So, and there's actually a statistic in Canada, again from Statistics Canada, that 85% of Canadians will die with assets of less than $10,000. Yet, last summer the IMF said that Canada is worth $155 trillion in assets. So how is it possible that the people that produce those assets die with assets of less than $10,000? It's the way we're playing the game is the problem.
All right, carry on.
We're acting like a token.
Right.
Okay, and as long as we keep doing that, we'll be doing the same with our children, and our children's children, and our children's children, and there will be no end of it. And the reason that General Motors is, I know they're suffering in manufacturing vehicles over there, is the consumer. It's not General Motors' fault. It's not the employee's fault. The consumer has no more credit.
They're maxed.
They're tapped out.
Yes, we're in a credit crunch. We're in a credit crisis.
That's right. And the credit
So no
crisis,
longer we didn't have enough money, and it was because there was that shortfall that you talk about. We ended up borrowing money just to keep going.
That's right. And
Okay.
we borrow and borrow and borrow and borrow.
Right. Which
And
is
borrow
where,
and borrow and borrow and borrow. And you
Right.
can only borrow for so long before you're tapped out.
right before you can't borrow anymore.
That's right.
Because you can't service the debt.
That's correct. And that's basically what's happening to the worldwide economies right now is the consumer, after the accumulation of debt over the last 30, 40 years. Back in the 60s, the debt in this country was very teeny. And then in the 70s, the consumer started to get greedy and started charge it, not thinking about the future. And so where purchasing power has been going this direction, debts have been going this direction. And you have to remember, on a debt, there's an interest payable.
Right.
And that does not exist. The bank lends a principal amount. It does not create the interest into circulation. And I'm not bank bashing here. This is our fault.
Well,
our
that's the
choices.
right. We decided this, right?
That's right.
The bank's not at fault here. The bank's only doing what we told it to do.
That's right.
Right.
And the ultimate, if I may, in case I forget here, the ultimate solution for we people that are going to work and building these assets, there's only one way to stop this, and that is you work for free. Because when you work for free, there is no cost of goods.
Because there's no cost labor, but what about the raw materials?
Well, where do the raw materials come from? The ground.
Right.
What does that cost? God gave it all for nothing. It's free.
Okay.
However, a man came along and said, that's my tree.
Right.
And I'll sell it to you. The carpenter, and the carpenter says, well, I've got an investment in the tree, so now I've got to charge for my labor to sell the table to get my investment back.
Right.
So it started with the concept of ownership, really,
Okay.
in our consciousness, if you will, which is back to the Babylon time. But at the moment in time in our history that we forgot that the planet belongs to all of us equally, including all of its resources, and we do what we do out of love for each other rather than for money. As soon as we got the concept of ownership and wanted to be paid for our labor, this is where we're at today.
Okay. But
And so the only answer to solve the problem this is not going to happen overnight, and I'm not delusional about that, but the ultimate solution is that if the worker works for free, remember the natural resources cost nothing. It's the cost to pay the labor to dig them out.
So let's say I have a backyard, right?
Yep.
Okay, I got a backyard, and in my backyard is every mineral I ever needed to build a car.
Yep.
Okay, so all I've got to do is take my time to dig it up, and then all of a sudden I put out of whatever's in my backyard, I build this car.
Yep.
Sounds ridiculous, but let's play.
Let's say you build 2 cars.
Okay, I built 2 cars.
You only need 1.
Right.
I do the same thing in my backyard, and I build 2 houses.
Right. So I'll give you my car, and you give me a house.
That's right. What did it cost?
Nothing. My time.
Are you happy?
It costs you my time.
You got a house in a car, and I got a house in a car.
All works out good.
So the point is, there's no cost there, is there?
No.
There's no accounting of, well, we invested this much, so we've got to recover this much.
Okay.
So when the people finally realize that it's the cost of our labor that is that's creating the cost of these goods, that is the price, when we stop doing that, then there is no cost, and now everything is free. What I mean by free is we expend our labor, like you said, to build that car. That's the only cost, and that comes freely from God anyhow, and we're doing that anyhow.
Okay.
Using our labor.
All right.
But that's the end of it.
Okay, we
So-
probably lost half the audience now, but yeah, okay. All right,
But that's a hard fact to face, but that's the truth.
Well, let's assume, for example, that if I don't get paid and you don't get paid, but I go build something because I can build it because all the materials are sitting in my backyard, just for example,
Yep.
and I don't charge for my labor, and you don't, I just give it to you, and you have something I want, and I get it back. Sounds great. Sounds a little socialist, but sounds great.
Well, I'm not here to tell people what to do.
Okay.
I'm pointing out a serious problem if we continue on the treadmill of working for a living and have that difference between gross pay and net pay.
Yes.
Having to then borrow from the banks the difference and then pay interest on that borrowing,
Right.
adding to the debt.
Yes.
And remember, interest does not exist.
Right.
It's not there, but it has to be paid.
Okay.
So there is never enough in circulation for everyone to meet their financial obligations.
So eventually we're going to go down the pipes.
Well,
And here we are.
it's like having a sink with you keep pouring water, you keep the tap on full, but you've got the drain out.
Right.
Yes, it will hold some water, for a while, but you put another extra hole or two in there, more debt, and then it won't hold any water, and that's the end of it all. And that's kind of where we're at. The ship is sinking.
Okay.
It's full of holes. And it's debt.
All right. So now what?
So, well, then we have our economists, and I'm not picking on economists, but if we get back to that $1 billion that it costs to produce the goods and services that are for sale next year, and we only got $650 million, yes, you can invest your remainder of your purchasing power into RSPs and get 4% a year in interest, but that's not going to come close to recovering what you need to pay your debts collectively. In other words, we need to, if the goods and services that we produced for sale are $1 billion, we need to have $1 billion in our pockets to buy back that, to have a balanced economy.
All right, we're going to go to break talking about maybe how we can balance it or what we need to be more aware of. And then we can ask some good questions. I'm sitting here with Beck, and you're with us on First Take Live. Stay with us. Welcome back to First Take Live. So now that we know that we're going down this big sinkhole, and most of us have to admit it, that it's not looking rosy out there. So now what? All right, so we have to understand more yet, because we've got to understand more about how this game works. So here's this game, and we're going down the tubes. We are not the person, I'm the person that is playing the game, but the token is the game piece. My birth certificate is a game piece.
Yep.
Therefore, it has, that's all. If I don't have a birth certificate, I can't play in this game called Canada.
That's right. You cannot get a bank account. You cannot get a job. You couldn't buy an automobile. You just simply cannot play the game. I just want to, just for safety's sake here, is you use the word person.
Okay.
Person is actually a trap. And people are not persons. Well, if you look on the $50 bills from 2 years ago in Canada, on there it says women are persons. Think about that. Women are persons. Well, if women are persons, then there's no women.
Okay.
And why can't women be women? Why can't men be men?
Women are women and men are men.
That's right.
Women are persons.
But legally, women are persons.
And it said
why the difference?
Why? What's the deal on that?
Why? Well, this is the person.
Ah, a person. Okay.
And when women won the right to become persons, what they actually won was the equality thing, was the right to be recognized as a token.
In the game.
In the game.
Okay.
If you look at all the laws in this game here, and I'm talking the provincial and federal statutes, and I've read almost all of them, they have a definition section. And the definition section identifies to whom that statute or law, rule, or regulation applies. And it will never, ever, ever say men or women.
It'll say?
Persons.
Okay. All right.
Why?
Persons are tokens.
You need to ask that question. Why can't women be women?
Why does a woman have to be a person?
That's right. And so when we won this equality thing, we all became tokens. We should have remained men, and women should remain women.
Okay.
Saying a woman is like a person is like saying an apple is an orange.
Right.
That can happen in law.
Because we're talking about law.
Anything goes.
All right, let's talk about this Bank Act. Is that what we want to talk about now?
Well, yeah, and that's, I guess we could start here back to the Monopoly game.
All right, let's go to back to the Monopoly game.
Keeping in mind that the player is not obligated, when the player comes to play Monopoly here, he does not bring money to the table.
Yeah, right, they just show up.
The game provides it to the player for purposes of playing the game.
Right.
And the same thing is going on out there, but where is it?
Okay, to the bank.
Okay, we all got this token to play the game out there. It's the people in the country here, the labor that is building the homes and the cars and the TVs and the furniture that ends up on the Monopoly game.
Okay.
Right? Doesn't come from the game, it comes from the people. So the players are building these instruments, these homes, TVs, furnitures, all our luxuries, our airplanes, our aircraft, apartment buildings, you name it. The highways, the telephone poles, the wires, all of it.
Yeah, people build it.
Is the people outside of the game, in their natural state, building these things for the game.
Okay.
Of which we're all players.
Okay.
Okay, so we need to, again, get that in perspective. And we also, the game comes with the money so that the players can acquire the properties.
Right.
For the token.
Yeah.
Not themselves.
The token is what plays the game.
That's right.
The token's the game.
That's right, which is that legal name on that certificate.
Okay.
So people are driving around out there in a car they think is their car, but it's not.
It belongs
legally to the token.
Okay.
Because it's registered in the name of the token.
Well, I'm watching the movie The Matrix. Okay, go on.
As is the house.
All right, go.
As is the phone service, the hydro service, all of these things. Remember, the player is not the token, and everything that's going on out there is addressing the token, not people.
Got it.
Ever.
Keep going.
And again, in here, there's no mention of men and women in here.
In
persons. In the laws out there.
In the laws out there.
In every law book out there, except the Bank Act.
Okay.
and the Securities Act.
All right.
Those two acts or statutes recognize people in their natural state, if you will, and they don't call it men and women, but they refer to it as us as natural persons, which simply means human being.
Okay, so it actually says in the act a natural person.
That's right.
And I'm a natural person, and so are you.
That's correct.
Fair.
So are women.
Okay.
But if you want to be a person, to say you're a person is to say you're a token.
Ah, okay. All right, good.
That's what the law will see.
Okay.
You know, if a lawman sees someone says he's a person, I've got authority over you. You're a token.
Right. But if I say I'm a natural person and have no authority over me.
No.
All right, keep going.
Zero.
All right.
And so the player is not required to come to the game with money. The game provides the money.
Okay, right.
But because we've been acting like a token, believing that this is our house we're buying, then we go to the bank to borrow money to buy a house for the token. It's not even our house, when all we had to do was go to the bank and get the money, to ask for the money, rather than borrow the money.
Okay, explain.
I just did.
I do it again. Well, because by this time?
The game comes with the money.
Okay,
so your Bank of Canada in Ottawa is the banker here.
Oh, right, so it's got money.
That's right.
And it says, so I can go to that bank and say, I need money to start my game.
It's the source of the money.
Source of money, okay.
It's not your local charter bank is not the source. The Bank of Canada is the source, and it filters through into the economy through the charter banks.
All right.
So all the all the charter banks, there are agents for the Bank of Canada, our bank.
Okay.
You were going to bring the piggy bank in here. And,
I didn't bring the piggy bank. I should have brought the piggy bank. Sorry.
The thing is there is no money in the bank. It doesn't really exist, but it's an accounting entry. But when a requisitionist, say, when you go to a bank to borrow money, the first step is to issue the bank a promise to pay.
Right.
That bank then takes that promise to pay and gets the money from the Bank of Canada, which is just basically an accounting entry, if you will. But they need that note first.
So I go to the bank and say, I want to borrow some money.
Yep.
I want you to give me a loan. And I sign this little piece of paper saying that I'm going to pay for that loan.
Yep.
They take that loan, they take that piece of paper and walk over to the bank.
And they come and get money.
Okay, they come and get the money. All right. and then the bank comes back to me and goes, here's your money.
Here's your money.
Thank you. Okay, it's in the game.
Hang on here, sir. Before we give you that money, we need you to sign over here that you're going to promise to pay us that money back plus interest. And if you don't pay, we get your house.
Right.
Okay, so you sign the dotted line here. And
so I sign off on that.
Okay, so you've signed that you're going to pay us all this money back to the bank, and you're going to pay plus the interest. And if you don't pay, you know you're losing your house, right?
Yep.
Okay, here's the money. Good luck to you.
All right.
That's option number one.
Okay.
That's one way of doing things, and that is how everyone is doing things. Because, well, I'll let you people let the people decide where they're doing that, but probably because, and there's no blame here, our parents did that, and our grandparents did that, and it's just all we know.
Okay.
And we get stuck in this path of not bothering to seek another path, so we just bought into the same story everyone else is doing.
The processionary caterpillar.
The collective consciousness. You know, it's all the same public idea here.
Okay. All right.
But what happened here in this little transaction that we just did is that you gave a note to the chartered bank, who went over here and got money.
I gave the note to my local bank location, who then went to the big bank, which is called Bank of Canada,
that's right,
and said, I got a piece of paper that this guy says he wants money,
yep,
and now give me money.
Yep.
And the bank says, sure, no problem.
That's right.
Okay, so now the local bank, whoever it is, has the money in the hand, and I come and get it, and then I agree to that local guy to say, here's my money, and I'm going to give you extra money back for the fact that
you lent it to me.
You lent it to me.
That's right.
But that local bank didn't give me anything.
No. Whose note was it, Garth?
I signed the note.
You signed the note. Well, signing a note is like painting a picture. You're the maker.
I made the note.
Okay. When you sign a check or you sign a note, you're the maker.
Okay.
It's your note.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you gave your note to your bank,
right,
who took it over here to get money.
Right.
Whose money is it?
Well,
remember, it's your note, not the bank's note. It's your note.
Well, it's my money.
Exactly. If I sell your car, Garth, whose money is it?
My money.
If I sell anything that belongs to you,
it's my money.
So that's.
So
be careful what you ask for.
All right,
what it comes down to.
So we have to, when we walk in, we don't go ask. We want to borrow money. We don't want to loan money. We want to go to the bank and say, "Can I have some money?"
That's right.
But hang on a second.
But you need to have some knowledge here.
That's knowledge. All right, let's go to a break. We're going to run out of time. But all right, Vic, thanks for doing what you do. Be right back with more of Vic Beck, First Take Live. With Vic Beck here. All right, so I go to my local bank. I sign a note saying that whatever the note is, I want money because I want money to fund this token to go whatever it needs to go and do. It takes it to the big bank. The bank says to them, "Okay, here's the money that guy signed for, and I'm going to give the money."
Yep. But let me just, if I may, quickly clarify. When that note that we talked about a moment ago that you gave to your bank, that bank took and got money from the Bank of Canada.
Yeah.
That note was signed by you in your capacity as a natural person.
The guy playing the game.
That's the guy playing the game,
not the token.
Not the token.
Okay, good.
Okay,
yep.
so it's your signature on that promise to pay that actually is the money.
Okay.
Or the means to the money, your money.
Okay.
And what's happening here is when you're getting the money, it's not to accommodate for yourself, because remember, the player is not part of the game. He's separate from the game.
Right.
So the reason you're asking for the money is just like in the game of Monopoly is here, is for the tokens purposes.
Yeah, it's got to eat, it's got to wash, it's got to
That's
draw
right.
a car, it's got the token.
That's
token
right.
needs stuff.
That's right. It's just simply for accounting, though, under the name of the token. But technically, on paper, that house is registered to the token, so your note is funding a loan so the token can buy the house that we built that you're going to get to live in.
Okay, good. Okay.
Okay, and so that's to make that clear. So it's the signature of the natural person in that capacity, and that capacity only, that note is as good as the money sitting over here.
All right.
It's the access to it.
Okay. Now, you have great knowledge of the Bank Act. And the Bank Act, Section 2 and Section 15 are something that are very dear to you because they tell you what?
Well, it's a repeat here, and I got the Holy Bible here, and it's if we go back to Genesis 1:26 through 28, basically this is where God gave dominion. God made man in His image,
right,
and gave man dominion over the earth. Under Section 15 of the Bank Act, essentially the Parliament of Canada made a bank in the image of man.
Okay.
Okay, and if you understand authority, okay,
Yeah.
I think we'll all agree that there's a supreme being up there that's running the show here, really. Man is number 2, bank is number 3. Okay, and what that means essentially is that if the bank is a creditor, then we're a better creditor.
So the bank, okay, because the bank is now the equivalent of a person, though. It's no
Yep,
better.
a natural person,
No,
legally.
like-
It's given the status of a natural person, of a human being, legally, although it doesn't have legs and
We
can't
got
walk.
2 minutes. All right, so keep going. So
Okay.
now that you understand this in the Bank Act.
Yep, so the bank is a creditor to the game,
Yep.
but without the people, there could not exist a bank.
Okay.
So this is why in the Bank Act also that note that you gave that we talked about earlier, that you signed in the capacity as a natural person that your bank took over here to get the money,
Yeah.
is not a debt obligation.
It is
Very
not.
critical to understand that. That promise to pay is not a debt obligation, and it is not a debt obligation because natural persons are not debtors. Entities are, and tokens are. Okay, so it's right in the Bank Act.
Okay.
So there's no requirement to repay, and all that's happening here is that, and the Supreme Court of Canada has said very clearly that it's the natural resources of the country and the industry of the people that backs government obligations, that backs the money. So whose money is it? At the end of the day, it's our money, and so we have full right to ask for the money, but we have to be in the proper capacity and proper status and understand how the game is going in order to get that money. If you want the money for yourself, you're not going to get it. If you want it for the token, that's a different story.
Because the token has to eat, the token has
Because this
to
money does not come into the player's pocket. It stays with the game.
Okay, so we got about 30 seconds left. So Vic, you don't do many seminars on this anymore. One of the books you said that was a good one to read was Babylonian Woe.
Babylonian Woe, it's a private publication. It is not available on in bookstores. You can only acquire it on the internet.
Okay.
And it will share with you how we used to be thousands of years ago,
Yes.
and how we've evolved into this whole concept of ownership, and why we're in the pickle we're in today. You'll see it all right there.
All right, I got to let you go, but it's been a fascinating tour, and we got to have you back for part 2. Vic, part 2. Thanks. Hey, thanks
Thank
for
you very
watching
much.
tonight. Hope you enjoyed us. Let's go play Monopoly. We already are. And thanks to Paula Beebe for doing a great job, and also for the crew for doing what they do. Thanks for being with us tonight. Have a great weekend, okay? If you don't, it's your fault.